Carlos Nelson with the Kansas City Business Association, and tonight we're continuing our series on politics. As we've said, that we have people running for the city council, we have people running for the Kansas City School District right now, and tonight we have a guest that is running for the Kansas City School District. Who do we have here?
My name is Rita Cortes.
Hey, Rita, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. And when I say that, let's talk about who you are. Let's talk about middle school, high school, and whatever degrees you have.
Okay, it's going back a long time in history. Let's see. I started at the Barstow School, which is a private school out south. I transferred in 7th grade to what was then the Sunset Hill School and is now the Pembroke Hill School. Graduated from there in 1983, and then I went to college down in Texas at a small school called Rice University.
I'm familiar with Rice.
I played basketball down there.
You played basketball?
I played 2 years of basketball.
Rice was at the Penn Relays when I was a senior in high school. And those were the those were the fastest white boys that I had ever seen. And they were in the finals of the mile relay. And they were against Villanova.
Oh, wow.
And Olympian Larry James. They were in the lead for 3 legs. And the ankle leg, they called. But I had never really heard of Rice. Did not know that they had athletic history. Tell our audience a little bit about your career as a player.
So I would say that nobody would have ever thought about me as a professional athlete. But I played the 1 and the 2 guard in high school, and I played the 2-3 guard in college. Managed to get pretty badly injured my freshman year, so that was a rehab year. Played my sophomore year, and then at the end of my sophomore year, the soccer team had 2 goalies that had been injured, and they came looking for someone to play goalie. I'd never played soccer. I grew up playing I played field hockey. And then I played 3 years. So I played the end of my sophomore year, junior year, and senior year as the keeper on the soccer team. Learned a lot along the way. I never learned not to play hard. So I was the scrapper.
All right. And so college, you got any degrees?
Okay.
Tell our audience a little bit about that.
A bachelor's degree in political science from Rice, and then I moved to Washington, D.C. And
I lived in Laurel.
I love that place. It was home for almost 10 years.
How do you like the seafood?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. So I went to law school in D.C. Graduated from George Washington University. Stayed out there to practice law, and got kind of lured back to Kansas City by a family business.
What kind of business is that?
Family business at the time was called Hoffman Cortez Contracting, commercial general contractor.
Oh, all right. I remember Hoffman Cortez. Did they have something downtown, an office downtown?
So our office was at 11th and Troost for, probably almost 20 years. And then we had somebody who wanted to buy the building, sold the building, moved over to the Crossroads. We were at 16th and Baltimore for over a decade. What I realized about 10 years into running the business and acquiring it over time from my family was that I did not want to spend my life in the construction business. I missed practicing law, which I also understand is a little bit of a disease that I've missed.
What part of the law do you practice?
So when I was in D.C., my practice was mostly litigation. I represented lenders in commercial bankruptcies, and then mostly real estate related. And then when I went back to private practice here in Kansas City, I joined a firm here.
What firm?
Siegfried Bingham, and I'm still actually of counsel with the firm. And I had mostly corporate practice. So in the middle there, I at night went back and got my what's called an LLM, which is an advanced law degree.
All right.
And we jokingly call it an advanced degree in nerd. It's in taxation.
All right.
So I got my degree and went back to practicing law and did kind of a combination of working with lenders, working on mergers and acquisitions, and lots of corporate related work since I had a little bit of business experience.
So what made you want to Boy, I don't know how to say this. With your experience, what made you want to run for the Kansas City School District?
So, there are a number of things,
All right,
but let me share.
to our audience.
So today, my job is running a foundation here in town.
What's the name of that?
I have the true joy of working for something called the Menorah Heritage Foundation.
And what do they do?
So we fund programs that help create a healthy community, so social determinants of health, some people who are experimenting with ideas to try to help folks around the community live healthier lives. We fund programs that help older adults age in the community, so home repairs, senior centers, projects that really...
So some of the things we talked about off camera, you ain't let me know you was doing all that.
That's what I do during the day. So, and truly, through the course of so many people and so many organizations being gracious enough to share their experiences and their hard work, I talk to a lot of folks who work with a lot of families who are students in KCPS. So I get a little bit of a glimpse of the challenges that those families and those students are facing. But more than anything, from the moment I was born, all I heard about was the importance of education. My grandmother was a public school teacher in New York City.
All right.
My sister,
hometown.
My sister is an early childhood educator now, but she was a kindergarten and first grade teacher. But from my mother, every day, the difference in the trajectory in the life of my family when they arrived in this country.
And where tell me this, where is your semi-roots are?
Where my roots are? My grandfather grew up in Guadalajara, Mexico, and the rest of my the rest of my grandparents came from were first generation born in America from mostly Eastern Europe.
What part?
The Ukraine, Austria, and Russia, Poland. Sorry.
All right.
So, you know, my family. Despite I have kind of that mixed background.
No, you are American.
That's American.
That's what America is.
Absolutely.
If we wake up and really understand, nobody's original but the Indians, and they really not original.
We're all humans.
Yeah, and as we talked off camera, the more educated you become, the more you really understand that we all walked out of Africa, no matter what our skin tone, and we're all related.
Yes, we are.
And if would you do some of the things to your wife, to your son, to your daughter? Would you have them have bad education because of skin color, because political beliefs? Once you understand that we're just one human race, then we might can get some traction on cooperation. What do you have to say about that?
You're preaching to the choir. Truly and completely. The reason I want to serve is because I believe at the very core of my being that every child in this city, every child in this world deserves access to and encouragement toward a great education.
How do you think the past administrations have, do you think that we've had good leadership in general? And is that another reason? Don't let me put words in your mouth, but I'd like to find out what your opinion is. You've been here for a minute. When I moved here, Bob Wheeler was the superintendent of Kansas City School District, and they had their accreditation, I think, at that time. And things were a little different. And now I think we're going through the same changing of the guard with this new superintendent, and we've made some traction on this accreditation. It's still not really full like it really needs to be, but working in a positive way. How do you think that you can add to moving forward with our Kansas City School District and the things they need?
So I believe that both Dr. Patel and his predecessor have done very positive things.
My fraternity brother, Green.
Yes, to really stabilize the school district. I also see and hear of the great potential that Dr. Patel brings to the district.
Can you verbalize on that any?
Well, I think that there is a belief that, and I would say one of the reasons why I believe I can contribute something positive to the district is there is a belief that he's capable of great things.
Right.
And of bringing a greater sense of urgency around student achievement. And that is, the system is stabilizing. You talked about accreditation, but we still have a ways to go with basic student achievement in things like reading and math and the things that give you and I the tools to have really great...
I'm going to switch gears real quick. And now we're going to go rapid fire to a degree. What you think about all of this kindergarten stuff with the mayor and...
Talking about the pre-K?
Yeah, get me together, sister.
So, you know what? I'm a little bit on the pro pre-K side because I have listened to early childhood educators my whole life, and I get the critical nature of getting kids into school as early as possible to have that fun experience so that when they get to kindergarten they're ready. I understand, believe me, I understand a lot of the flaws in this plan, but I look at the district and think, what's the alternative plan? I keep hearing about alternatives.
Well, tell me this, why is all the educators on this side and the mayors on this side, and our public really doesn't understand, and I've asked different people to give their rendition, and from my perspective, I didn't understand, but one thing I do understand, follow the money. And all of this, because both sides say pre-K. Anyone that got a brain know we need pre-K. But now when we start talking about how that pie is sliced, and that pie meaning how these dollars are being distributed, that's where the discrepancy is, but nobody's really talking about that. They keep talking about pre-K. And people's like, how can you be against pre-K? Oh, I'm for pre-K. Well, they for pre-K. But what pre-K are you for and why?
So I think the short answer is I'm for anything that gets the kids into pre-K now.
All right.
And my concern about the alternatives is if the real alternative, the real practical alternative is a tax levy for KCPS for pre-K. First, they've got to get the legislature on board. Not an easy task. And the second is they got to get the voters on board. And I would share with you from the conversations I've had with the voters in Subdistrict 1, we got a hill to climb.
Your constituents, yeah.
We got a hill to climb. And in addition to that, when you look at student achievement in the district, if you had the opportunity to do a tax levy, would you use it for pre-K? Or would you use it for intensive interventions?
Hold on, let me tell you this, and I've had this discussion now about the downtown council and the corporate community. I don't think that they're paying their fair share of anything. And they're talking about all these taxes. How about taxing them? And Kansas City, the corporate community, downtown council, all of them, smart city, and we want to make the city a shining example. But you don't want to make the city a shining example when you got to take out of your budget to help fund some of the urban core projects and some of the urban core. You know, I discussed this with some of the other candidates. You know why the Kansas City School District really hasn't been working right? Do you really want to know?
I want to know your opinion, absolutely.
All right. Because if the Kansas City, for the last 30 years, if the Kansas City School District works right, there is no Johnson County School District. Because the young professionals, they wouldn't be trying to move in the suburbs. They'd be moving downtown, but they want good education for their kids. And either they can get good homes, good living environment, and good school when you move in the suburbs. You move here, you might want to be downtown because you're coming from a metropolitan area and you're used to public transportation and you're used to all of the amenities that are living in the urban core. But you don't want to move here because if I move here, now I got to pay to have my kids go to private school. So I'm paying high rent. And so it's easier for me to move out to Johnson County or Lee Summit and that's hurting us here.
Absolutely.
All right.
I would agree with you. When I again have these conversations with voters in Sub-District 1, what I hear, and this is a lot from the parents of people who, their grandparents, right? They've got grandkids who are 1 and 3 and 5, and their kids are living in Kansas City, Missouri right now. And they know their kids are going to leave, right? They're going to move out to Johnson County. They're going to move out to Lee Summit. They're going to move up north. And those are great places.
Right.
But I think the city is better.
And it leaves the city barren.
Yes.
And that's what, and then when you start talking about the overall, and education is a major part, but when you don't have economics and you don't have all these things, how can you hope to have a healthy, all-around city?
I agree. You look at the data that was presented to the school board in the last couple of months about the flight of the middle class from the district, regardless of race.
Right.
Right? That is really a continuation of a pattern that we have to find a way to change.
Well, and that's why in these interviews I keep pointing at the corporate community. When they want something done, it gets done because they run the economics. They're running things. And if they wanted to see the district succeed, the district would succeed. And whether they want to see it succeed or not, if the board members and the administration put on the proper campaigns to put them in position where the community knows either you helping the community or you're not.
Well,
in public relations, is a big thing.
I think that's one of the mayoral candidates, Quentin Lucas, in one of the panels. I can't even imagine what their life's been like the last few months, right? Every night, every day, made a comment about the fact that, I can't remember if it was the development community or the business community, didn't think about KCPS. And I think that's true, and it's not necessarily just their fault. I think that one of the roles that I can bring to the board is the ability to reach out to that business community and recreate deep relationships.
That's what I want to hear.
Because
that's what I want to hear.
I spent 20 years as part of the business community. My legal practice has
how they think.
Working with the business community. People care. They just need to get exposed to it.
Most of the time, what I've learned just being in business, most of the time, especially administrators, and you remember I told you I was in construction. Short story, all right. When I renovated the courthouse, you have a purchasing agent. A lot of times, them people, they know, but they don't know. The more you in position to set everything up on turnkey, they buy in. And if you show the corporate community, hey, this, and this is what it's going to cost, and this is how it's going to work. Now, but asking them to figure it out, asking them to get involved in all of that, you really don't get a whole lot done.
Show them a path. You hear, in the conversations that I have with business leaders, they talk a lot about the need for a 21st century workforce, right? And that is an educated workforce. That is a committed workforce, and those are people who will be creative thinkers.
All right, now that you're talking about that, we can go to this next subject. I've been talking about Vogue Tech, and we're talking about this workforce. We've got a hell of a construction schedule for the next 10 years with the airport, the hotels, and they come up with the trolley car and all of this. All right, we don't have qualified workforce out here to do the work that is out here, and Vogue Tech is not really at the forefront of what I think we should be doing. I don't know whether you were in the room when I was saying about Charlie Rose. All right, you know who Charlie Rose was on PBS every night.
Okay.
All right.
I just want to make sure that was the right Charlie Rose.
Right. All right. So when Gates and Buffett, this about 10 years ago, when they start trying to put all this money for public education because they noticed the whole thing is crumbling. And so one night Charlie Rose had the top 10 corporate executives in America on the show. And they were talking about the school system and what was going on. And one thing they all had in common, they all were athletes. And they were talking about the value of sports. And this is where I have a problem with our, and had a problem with our district. Yes, you got to get accreditation. But you look at UCLA, you look at Stanford, you look at all major schools, they have great academic programs, but when you think of UCLA, you think of basketball or something. You think of Stanford, you know Stanford got the good academic, but you're thinking of football and the things that they're accelerating in. And when you think of our high schools back in the day, you might have wanted to go to Central just because they had this, and that emphasis is totally lost. All right, so getting back on track. So they were saying that playing sports showed you how to win, showed you how to lose, showed you how to persevere, and that was necessary. They thought that was an integral part of education. All right, then the other integral part, they said, they have taken shop out of all of our schools. And they said, working in theory on things versus working with your hands, two different things. And when going to Vogue Tech, when we're not putting institutions and creating partnerships where everybody is not meant to be a doctor, a lawyer. Some people, you got to have the trash man. You got to have the people to fix your car. Now everything is electronic. Where's that training taking place? Where's the training for the, as you said, talking to the corporate community? Hey, what's your projection on code writing? How many people are you going to need in the next 5 years? And now as educators, hey, we need to be trying to produce this. They say they're going to need this. Creating some partnerships where if we turn, you say you need 50? If we turn out 50, can we get a contract now saying if they qualify that you're going to hire them? And so, with you being a lawyer, with you being in construction, I think you understand where I'm coming from on that. And I don't think a lot of that has taken place with the district. New ways of thinking, and you know, off camera I talked about Ocasio, and the nation is changing. And we've got to change with it. And that means not really accusing the corporate community or putting blame, but trying to create new relationships and trying to see how we can get them to buy in on participating in a financial way to help uplift our public schools and our community.
The reality, and there's a couple things you mentioned that I want to touch on.
Please.
I think one of them is that it should be a two-way street, right? You can't just go to the corporate community and say you must. It's
right.
Not very effective. You can't go to the public schools and say you must. So there's somewhere where we have to find
middle ground,
real partnership. That's one. Number two, there's this. There are real equity concerns around. You want every kid to have every opportunity, right? And so there's this sense that if we encourage kids into VOTEC, we aren't encouraging them towards a college track. I think I would challenge that conventional wisdom. Mm-hmm. If you're going to go into a career in the trades, construction trades, let's just do that because I know them better.
Yeah, both of us.
If you're going to encourage a kid to learn coding skills, you also better be encouraging that kid to be a lifelong learner. Because the opportunities, the ceiling is only as high as the more you learn, the bigger that gets. You and I were talking about that before, right? The more you know.
Skill set.
And so just because you went down a technology track, which we should have, and think about the technology companies in this town. There could be great partnerships. And there may be small ones, but they could be big ones. Those kids, those young people who are encouraged down that track, who develop those skills, those employers want to see them grow, right? Those are their future leaders. Those are their future recruiters. So not thinking about VOTEC and college readiness as mutually exclusive is one of, I think, the most important things. I know in talking with some of the leaders in the construction industry, there's a huge desire to grow those partnerships. But I also can tell you, from having been in the construction industry in 2008, that we've got to give those young people the tools to be entrepreneurial if the economy doesn't deliver on the job opportunities, to be able to take those skills and create their own companies, to create opportunities.
But it's got to be. But it's, again, it has to, and those type of opportunities come from the business community and a willingness to share and to provide some assistance, because without financing, you're not going anywhere in construction.
Yep.
And
we both have lived that, so I get it.
Let's move on to how do you see sports when the Kansas City School District, most of our kids have one gym. And these suburban schools, they have 4 or 5 gyms. And that one gym, the cheerleading, the basketball team, everybody's got the soccer, everybody's got to use that gym. How do you see you can bring some changes to that situation as it relates to it? I know we got some stadiums supposedly to be online now. How do you see that?
You know, I
being an athlete also.
I was going to say, being an athlete, I believe fully, not every kid wants to be an athlete, but every kid should be encouraged to be athletic, to be engaged in physical activity, even if their talents lie in other directions.
Well, I was more so, we know we need physical education. Right. I was more so in how do you want us to compete when these other schools, they got a freshman gym, they got a sophomore gym, the girls and the boys. When we have one gym, you got a girls team, you got a boys team, where they can practice every day. The boys team or the girls team, you practice on Monday and Wednesday, and then you got the gym on this day.
I think that I can't claim any expertise in that area. Look, I played in college with one gym. You
but did your competition? Yeah, hold on. What I was saying is, all right, when I go, because we have the sports, I go out to Lee Summit North, right? They got 30 freshmen on a freshman team, they in their gym. Yeah. They got a JV, they got 30 or 40 kids in the JV, they going into another gym. Then they, head coach, the varsity, they in another gym. So when you even just talking about training your talent, we were talking about, we were looking at some of the interviews on Cascade Sports and what have you, and how do you compete when they have more training, they have more resources and what have you, and you're all in the same division?
I think it's a combination of you reaching out, trying to use community resources that are around you.
And that's where I'm saying, I think making a real plea and pitch to the corporate community, because it's a tax write-off. And when I say that, they choose what they want to write off. And I'm saying, you want a great city, why don't you write off $1 million stadium or a new gym and really build your community?
I'm not sure if you can get the corporate community in, that, is building another gym your first priority, or is getting them to invest in?
Well, I'm saying there's so many things that need, but what I'm saying is, we're talking about 50 years of the same facilities.
I understand.
And all I'm saying is, there are a lot of priorities, but again, I think, as I said with Charlie Rose, sports plays a big deal in your education and team spirit.
Right. I think
school spirit.
I think being encouraged to participate. I think participating. the lessons you learn in sports are very difficult to learn in the rest of life, right?
But they apply to tell me this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they're great. A great coach can change the trajectory of a kid's life.
Who changed your life in general? Now, give them some action. They might not even be on the planet no more. But talk about some of the people that really inspired you and how they did that.
So one of the people who truly inspired me, and he is no longer with us, was the rabbi of my synagogue when I was growing up.
All right.
He was unrelenting in his quest for social justice. He imparted on us the absolute obligation to be part of the community, and the community meant every human being, not just a narrow slice. He was an intellectual giant, and you knew that as a kid, right? When you're 10 years old and you want to hear the rabbi's sermon, right? I mean, usually you're trying to figure out a way to go outside and play with your friends. Let me tell you this.
I grew up in an all-Jewish neighborhood. We were the only black family in the Bronx. And I went to basically Grand Concourse and all this. I could remember we moved in the neighborhood, and back in them days, you had butcher shops. And here I'm a black kid. I go into the butcher shop in the new neighborhood asking for pork chops, and they kosher. And when I came here, one of the first places that Manny over there at New York Bakery, and my people was telling me that Cats in New York is closing. One of the guys that's running for school board, I forgot what his name was. We had a conversation, Jewish guy, and I was telling him the same thing. And a lot of people don't even know the history between not being curt, but Jews and blacks and the civil rights struggle. The part that they played in standing hand in hand with the African American community. And I think there's been a little schism, but I see things are coming back.
Think we're making some progress?
Yeah. And I didn't know that you were Jewish when we talked before, but I think encouraging that relationship, and I'd be happy to see you on the board. With us having a predominantly minority district, having some people on that board that really understand the struggles that we go through and have some things that they can contribute to make things better, not just, hey, this is wrong. What is the plan? Do you have a plan? You see that the district have a plan that you're ready to participate in if you get elected?
You know, I'm certainly prepared to support the strategic plan that the board has put in place. Mm-hmm. I think we need to go further. I think we need to, you know, I in one of my conversations said to someone, my job, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, is to be a great communal listener, is to be out in the community, and I don't just mean in Sub-District 1. And I literally said, take a walk around a park with someone, sit in a bakery or coffee shop or a wherever, barbershop. Doesn't matter. I need to hear, I need to understand everybody's own experience. I can't pretend to impose mine. But you asked about, you know, kind of the people I looked up to. Rabbi Margulies was, he brooked no kind of half measures. You had to be committed to the things that you believed in. You know, my childhood was spent learning about Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was part of that Jewish Black Alliance in the 60s. And
did anybody ever even talk about that as the last 20 years? Have you had any conversation in general about that, our alliance and what we have in common versus? Does that come up any?
You know, it comes up in the context of my work because you know, one of the organizations that we work with is called the Jewish Community Relations Bureau, mm-hmm. and their prior leader and the young woman who just started are very committed to real relationships. Rabbi Doug Alpert, who's involved with the Poor People's Campaign and with a number of the civil rights organizations And
sure, they know
organizing.
Sandman and them, and
Right. You know, it just really, these are people who I have great respect for, who do talk about the importance of the relationship between the Jewish community and the African American community, and the moment you believe that you're satisfied is the moment you should step out of the work.
I like that,
because
it's much more work to be done.
Yes.
Always. All right. In parting, what would you have to say to your constituents and our overall audience, why they should vote for you, and whatever else you want to say?
Well, I appreciate that. You'll have to kick me if I talk for too long.
No, I told you, this is our company. You can talk for an hour. There's no cut time.
Okay. So, I mean, truly what I think I bring is a level of, I have seen great educational leaders. I have worked with great educational leaders. I seek the opportunity to work with Dr. Patel. I also have been fortunate to be at the table in some very complex organizations in this town. Truman Medical Center is being a good example. Saw John Bluford as a leader who both challenged, knew when to lean forward, knew when to lean back. And I think that a board that will push the superintendent and a superintendent who will push the board will raise the level of this district more than what I think of where we are today, which is being happy with increments. Those increments are kids. And, you know, it's great when we improve student achievement by 1%, but that means there's 76% or 78% of the kids who don't have the skills that we are promising them. We have that obligation. But I think what I bring is the ability to create a sense of urgency, maintain a sense of urgency, while doing it in a way that brings out the best in both of us, in all of us, and doesn't become, you know, confrontational. I appreciate that the district is on a positive trajectory. I think that's really important to this city. You hear the mayor talk about all of the growth we've had downtown, but that growth needs to be communal. It needs to be broader, and we need to be giving kids the tools, the safety, and the stability to be participants in that as the community grows. So I bring a lot of passion. I talk a lot because I'm a lawyer. That's what I was trained to do.
I couldn't tell because you were in my office silent as the mics for 3 hours, it seemed.
I was listening.
Yeah, all right.
You know, listen first.
And that's what you said earlier. A few minutes ago, I'm a good listener. I'm going to be out in my community. I'm going to be listening to my constituents and other people's concerns. I'm not going to talk. I'll talk on your behalf at the meeting. But meantime, I'm listening to what your concerns. Or am I wrong? Is that what you were saying to them?
I try to live it. I try to live what I say. And I truly appreciate the opportunity to at least compete for the opportunity to serve KCPS. And I believe, because I've lived in this city most of my life, and I've always lived in Kansas City, Missouri, that I want to be part of making this city better for every kid who walks through the doors. We owe that to them.
Excellent. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And as we say when we close, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
This program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.